Hey guys, I made flowers using leftover tissue paper. You could use them to make a lei, flower crown, or wall hanging. You could also add them to gifts instead of using a bow. First, fold and cut tissue paper a few times to make smaller sheets. I use 2 small sheets per flower. Then fold it 3 times. The third fold is the middle of a petal. Cut a curve 2/3 of the way down, then open it. I wrapped it around a paintbrush, scrunched the bottom, and arranged the petals. Then I made another one. For the center, I cut slits on one side. Then wrapped it around my finger and twisted the bottom. Add glue and place it in the center of the petals. Then add glue and wrap the other petals around it. Place them between the previous petals. Then twist the bottom. I made them in different colors. Next, I made leaves and separated them. I used 2 leaves per flower. Add glue, wrap a leaf around it, and twist the bottom. Then add another leaf. I ended up making 90 flowers. I only needed half, so I made a wall hanging that could also be used as a flower crown. I used a long piece of macrame cord that I unraveled. I braided the center, combined the strands, and continued braiding it to form a loop. I separated the strands and made 2 braids near the end. Then knotted them. I used this old ribbon that I wanted to get rid of to wrap the flowers. I tied a knot and grouped the short end with the cord. I used the longer end to wrap around them. I added a flower on top of the cord, then wrapped around it a few times. I made a knot when adding the first few flowers, which was unnecessary. I stopped doing that and just made sure that the flowers were tightly wrapped. I continued to add a flower and wrapped around it a few times. To add new ribbon, I tied it to the cord and used the longer end to wrap around all of it. Near the bottom, I kept making knots. Then I tucked the end under the ribbon. You could knot the end and string ribbon through the loops to make an adjustable crown. If the size you have is good, just tie the end to the loop. I left it as a strip so that it'd be a wall hanging. And here's how it turned out.